BBC One.
This is BBC One Scotland. Good afternoon. The lunchtime news now with Andrew Harvey.
Good afternoon. 3 men have appeared in court in Northern Ireland charged with the murder of the loyalist terrorist Billy Wright. He was shot dead inside the Maze prison on Saturday. It led to the killing of a former Republican prisoner by loyalist terrorists. This morning, the Northern Ireland Secretary, Mo Mowlam, met senior prison officials and the RUC Chief Constable to discuss security.
The 3 men were brought from the Maze prison where they're already serving sentences for terrorist-type offences. Their addresses were given in court as care of the prison. The 3 are Christopher McWilliams, aged 35, John Glennon, 32, and John Kennaway, 35. All 3 were handcuffed to RUC officers as they were brought into Lisburn Magistrates Court and throughout the 5-minute hearing. A detective inspector told the court that when charged with murdering Billy Wright and possessing 2 guns and ammunition, John Glennon and John Kennaway made no reply. But when Christopher McWilliams was charged, he said to the detective inspector, Billy Wright was executed for one reason and one reason only, and that was for directing and waging his campaign of terror against the nationalist people from inside his prison cell. All 3 were remanded in custody until January the 14th. Billy Wright was the leader of the Loyalist Volunteer Force. He was shot dead inside the Maze prison on Saturday. The Republican group, the INLA, said it was responsible. At Stormont, the Northern Ireland Secretary Mo Mowlam and her Security Minister Adam Ingram, who cut short his Christmas holiday because of the situation, met for several hours with their security chiefs. Among them were the Governor of the Maze, Martin Mogg, the Head of the Prison Service, Alan Shannon, the Director of Security, John Steele, and the RUC Chief Constable, Ronnie Flanagan. He gave an assessment of the threat from paramilitaries and reported that in some areas security patrolling has been increased. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
The mother of the baby boy abandoned in Plymouth just before Christmas has come forward and is receiving counselling. The 2-month-old baby was nicknamed Noel after he was left with council staff by the woman who said she could no longer cope. The baby is being cared for by foster parents.
The baby, nicknamed Noel, is still being looked after by a temporary foster family 5 days after being abandoned by her distraught mother in a pushchair at this council office in Plymouth. She told staff, "I've had enough, I can't cope," before running into the street. Now the woman has been found a few miles away, and today the police and Devon Social Services refused to name her, but said she had been in a confused and distraught state.
This isn't a quick fix situation. There are a lot of problems which occurred with this woman and her baby over time, and we're going to have to spend quite a lot of time, well, the social services are, in trying to resolve the issue.
The social services say the 2-month-old baby will remain in care for the time being. As for the future, that remains uncertain.
In terms of being reunited with a child in the long term, that's to be determined by assessment by the various professionals involved, and I can't really comment any more on that at the moment.
It's unlikely the woman will face any charge in connection with abandoning her child in Plymouth. Stephen Cape, BBC News, Plymouth.
A passenger was killed and more than 100 others injured when a jumbo jet fell 1,000 feet in turbulence over the Pacific. The United Airlines Boeing 747 was flying from Tokyo to Honolulu. People who weren't wearing seatbelts were thrown against the luggage racks and the roof of the aircraft.
This was the moment Flight 826 plunged into a nightmare. A passenger's video camera caught the chaos as the United Airlines 747 went into free fall without warning. As it dropped 1,000 feet in seconds, passengers were catapulted from the aisles or their seats into the overhead lockers. Some were injured as heavy food trolleys were hurled around by the severe turbulence.
Without any notice, all of a sudden, the plane just dropped. And it was a very, very strange feeling. And for a while, we were hugging onto each other, and it didn't stop.
Meal plates and belongings littered the cabin as the jumbo, which was bound for Honolulu, turned back for Japan. As well as the 32-year-old Japanese woman who died, more than 100 passengers and crew were injured. Most suffered head and neck injuries. At least 10 were still in hospital hours after the accident. The majority of those on board had been Japanese tourists heading to Hawaii for the new year. One described hearing a loud bang before people were thrown from their seats. Others told how the food trolleys crashed down on passengers. Many who were hurt had been standing at the rear of the plane near the toilets. US air accident investigators are working to establish how it could have happened. Clarence Mitchell, BBC News.
1,000 people from Barry in South Wales are spending a second day in emergency accommodation after a train carrying flammable chemicals was derailed near their homes. The operation to pump the chemical out of a damaged wagon continued through the night, but police say the residents won't be able to go home until this evening at the earliest. Police across Europe must be given the power to intercept messages sent by criminals on the internet, according to the Home Secretary Jack Straw. Mr. Straw says that coded electronic mail is being increasingly used by criminals, including terrorists and paedophiles. He says the fight against cybercrime will be a top priority when Britain takes over the presidency of the EU in the new year. People of Kenya have been voting in presidential and parliamentary elections. Polling was delayed in many areas because the ballot papers weren't delivered in time. There are calls for the stations to stay open later to give everyone a chance to vote. President Moi is seeking a fifth and final term after 19 years in power. Hong Kong has begun to slaughter all its chickens, more than 1 million of them, in an attempt to stop the spread of a virus known as bird flu. 4 people have already died. 20 other cases have been confirmed.
It was billed as the biggest extermination of its kind, and the exterminators came well prepared. Death by gas. The method was last used to kill stray dogs in Hong Kong. Today, the masked officials from the Department of Fisheries and Agriculture administered an unusually early death to over 1 million chickens. Each bin liner holds up to 10 birds. The bags are filled with carbon dioxide. The agonizing death comes in seconds. Even though they were scooping up the chicks into their plastic coffins, it will take these officials all night to kill the 13,000 animals on this farm. None of them tested positive for the bird flu, but their extermination is meant to eradicate the H5N1 virus and send a message of reassurance to a panicking public. Killing the entire chicken population of Hong Kong is a highly dramatic and unprecedented gesture, but there are serious doubts about whether it can restore public confidence, because the 2 key questions at the heart of the matter still remain unanswered. Firstly, where exactly does the bird flu come from? And secondly, how does it get transmitted to humans? Matt Fry, BBC News, Hong Kong.
Stamps to commemorate the life of Diana, Princess of Wales, will go on sale at the beginning of February. The stamps were designed soon after the princess's death, but the post office delayed their release at the wish of the Spencer family. Profits will go to the Diana, Princess of Wales Fund. And that's all for now. The next news is at 6 o'clock.